Conservative commentators George Will and Charles Krauthammer are going to pile on Obama's foreign policy. But as you're listening to this, do yourself a favor and play a little game. Count the number of times that they propose the policies that they would do instead.
George, how much does perception factor in to how the president governs when it comes to foreign policy?
Perception matters a lot, and I think what some of our adversaries have decided is that the president is true to his word. I mean, the president hasn't been stealthy about this. He said, I'm withdrawing from Iraq and withdrawing from Afghanistan. I'm cutting the defense budget. I'm going in for nation building at home. And then he turns around and says, we're trying to help Putin stabilize the situation in the Crimea, where Putin is spending every waking hour on destabilization. And again, he is, as dictators often are, admirably candid about his objectives. This is just a mismatch. It's not a manhood problem. It's just that one man is tough and the other man doesn't want to wield the power of the United States.
Well, Ron, so much of what we're seeing play out with the president sounds like a lot of what he ran on in 2008 and 2012, and the voters backed him.
Yeah, part of this is the country did want, I think a large number of Americans still want, a rather quasi-isolationist, dovish, cautious president. At the same time, they want a president who's respected around the globe and will keep them safe. And I think the president has miscalculated what the American people really want, and has obviously been played on the international scene. I mean, today we had, in Syria, we have evidence again of chemical weapons used in Syria, a place where he talked about a red line and then let it get crossed, and talked about it again and let it get crossed, and set mixed signals, and I think looked weak. And perceptions do matter in politics, especially geopolitics.
Charles?
This is not a manhood issue with Obama. This is an issue of a complete absence of strategic thinking. It's not a question of the heart, it's a question of the head. This administration, this president, do not have a strategic idea in their head. Let me remind you that the first great speech Obama made about foreign policy was at the UN in 2009, and he actually said, no nation can or should dominate another. Without a doubt, the single stupidest remark about foreign policy.
Really? That's the stupidest remark about foreign policy? So you would like for nations to take over and dominate other nations? You're in favor of that? You like the idea of imperialism? You like the idea of going back to like a 1550s system where we have dueling empires and, just rampant savagery? I mean, this is the mentality that you're going to say you're in favor of? And you're also going to condescendingly say that it's stupid to disagree? I'm sorry, man, but these guys, they are stuck in a previous generation. Newsflash, the American people don't agree with you. And did you notice he said, well, the administration they don't have a strategy. They're not thinking about this stuff. The administration doesn't have a strategy? Really? Well, they've actually addressed all these different problems, and they've done specific things. Then you fail to mention that they did specific things, by the way. That's another thing here. How are they dealing with the situation in Russia? Well, they're doing massive economic sanctions and massive political sanctions, and they kicked Russia out of the G8 summit, and they're continuing to crack down, and they sent, military fighter jets to the nation, to the border of Ukraine, right, in between Ukraine and Russia, and they're doing many things. You don't bring up the things that they're doing, but you're saying what Obama is doing is wrong. And then I love the attack on Syria, too, in the middle. Like, the situation in Syria, they really should have done something about it, like taking away his chemical weapons or something. Hey, jackass, they did take away his chemical weapons. Just like we spoke about in the last story here. I'll give you the quote. This isn't from me. This is from Reuters on the issue of Syria. Reuters article, Thursday, October 31st. Quote, Syria meets deadline to destroy chemical production facilities. Boom, dunzo. See, the problem is all the chemical weapons aren't out of there because some of the facilities are in areas where there's still a lot of fighting going on. So it's the UN's job to go in and safely remove of the chemical weapons, but you can't do it while there's a war going on in certain places. So people are misinterpreting and misrepresenting that information and twisting it and saying, see, Assad's not giving up his weapons. Wrong. Assad signed the agreement. He gave up his weapons, and it's the UN's job to come in and take it out now. And then they say, oh, well, now he's doing a chlorine gas attack. Well, chlorine gas wasn't part of the deal, number one. And number two, you have no evidence it was the government. It could have easily been the rebels. Just like last time they said, oh, the Assad regime is using chemical weapons. Except it was the Assad regime and the rebels who used chemical weapons. But we only condemned one side when they used chemical weapons. We were fine with the rebels using it. Isn't that strange, especially since over 50% of the rebel movement is Al-Qaeda? But now all of a sudden the conservatives and the Republicans are on the side of the rebels? So, oh, Assad's so bad. So I guess what, you're allying yourself with Al-Nusra Front and ISIS? These jihadist groups, is that whose side you're on? See, that's the thing. They don't know. The problem with these guys is they don't know the facts. They're not up to date on all the news stories. They don't read the dense articles to get all the details to then talk about it. They've given up. So what they do is they just go out there and give their opinion without knowing all the facts, and they embarrass themselves. So when a guy like me, who reads these articles for a living, comes out and listens to what they say, I have like a list of 900 areas where they're wrong, and I have to fucking fact check them. And then look, I mean, here, let me break down some more for you. So when George Will says, well, why is Obama said he was going to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan, and he said he was going to do nation building here at home. How stupid. I love how he's mocking that idea. As if like anybody would agree with him. Even conservatives agree with that idea. They're like, why are we building up fucking Fallujah when we could be building up like Tuscaloosa, Alabama? Explain that to me. But he's mocking, like, of course we should build up Fallujah and not Alabama. What are you, crazy? No, you actually are the crazy one. But then he says, well, Putin is admirably honest in the situation. For 3 weeks, Vladimir Putin was saying that the fucking troops in Crimea, in Ukraine, were not Russian troops. That's the guy you're going to say is admirably honest? That's the least honest guy in the world right now. But this is what I mean. George Will, just give up, man. You're embarrassing yourself. This is the guy who said that Mitt Romney was going to win in a landslide victory. I always come back to that because what that demonstrates to you is that he's a fact denier. You know, there are, 29 polling agencies back in 2012. Only 2 of the 29 agencies had Romney either in a tie or winning slightly. But he said Romney's going to win in a landslide. Every other polling agency said Obama's going to either win by a little or a lot. He disagreed with all of the empirical data. Why? Because he's George Will and he's a fucking clown. His brain is in 1955. He's not like up to date with new ways of thinking and empiricism and like a scientific approach to figuring out the world. And then when the middle guy said, I don't even know his name, he said we should act on Syria. You know, he was alluding, oh, look, see, Obama's weak. We should have acted on Syria. Well, again, Dippity, we did get a deal to get out the chemical weapons, and we have gotten out most of the weapons. But what, you want to go further than that? Only 24% of the American people wanted to intervene at all. So you're admitting that you're on the side of the 24%, and you put your middle finger up to the majority of the American people in a democracy. Well done, dipshit. Thanks for letting us know you're not on the side of the people. Finally, think about the question I asked at the beginning. What did I say? Name one policy proposal they actually said, hey, look, here's where he's wrong specifically, and here's what I would do. Absent, right? Absent from the conversation. Why is it absent? Because, again, they don't know what they're talking about. Number one, they didn't tell you any of the specific policies Obama actually did and the administration actually did. And number two, they definitely didn't say, well, here's what I would do differently. I disagree with this particular sanction and I would do this other sanction. I would approach the situation this way. They don't do that. They just speak in broad, abstract, vague terms, and they just hope that you, the viewer, are not going to realize that they're full of shit. And their job is just simply to be an attack dog. Just be an attack dog and just say, he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong, without offering any solutions. But guess what? My nephew, who's a toddler, he could fucking do that too. You're wrong, 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 without offering any solutions. You want to have a high-minded discussion or you want to be a joke? Well, we know the answer. You want to be a joke. You want to critique like a toddler as opposed to actually offering solutions.